They share the same blood, the same walls, even the same childhood memories, and yet one becomes cautious while the other fearless. One craves order, the other thrives in chaos. How can two people, raised by the same parents, end up as such different minds? Psychology calls it the paradox of shared genes, the mystery of how sameness creates difference. And today, we'll dive deep into this fascinating question, not just with science, but with human insight. At first glance, the answer seems simple: genes. Siblings, after all, share roughly 50% of their genetic makeup. But genetics are not destiny. They're a starting point, not a script carved in stone. Modern genetics shows that the same genes can express themselves differently, depending on the environment. A field known as epigenetics. Think of your genes as a piano filled with musical notes, and your life experiences as the musician. The same piano can play a gentle lullaby or a thunderous storm, all depending on who's playing and when. This is why even identical twins who share nearly 100% of their DNA can show striking differences in behavior, health, and intelligence as they age. Why? Because experience literally changes which genes are turned on or off in the brain, especially those related to learning, emotion, and memory. It's not that their DNA changes, but the instructions that read the DNA are rewritten. Every joy, every fear, every challenge acts like a tiny switch, dimming one genetic trait while amplifying another. This means your unique life path is constantly shaping your biological reality, making you more and more distinct from your siblings with each passing year. We often assume that parents treat their children equally, but what's easily forgotten is that parents themselves change between children. The parents you meet as the eldest child are not the same people your youngest sibling meets. The first child is often raised under what I call anxious precision. Every cry is analyzed. Every developmental step is documented and compared. The parents are learning on the job, and that creates a very specific, high-stakes environment. By the time the second child arrives, the parents have evolved. They're more relaxed, more confident, or perhaps just more tired. This evolution alters how love, discipline, and attention are distributed, subtly shaping personality in profound ways. In psychology, this is sometimes called parental drift, the idea that parenting style isn't static. It shifts with life circumstances. A new job, financial stress, a move to a different city, or even family losses. All of these external pressures impact how each child experiences their parents. So, even within the same home, each child grows up in a completely different emotional climate. The eldest might remember a home full of tense ambition, while the youngest remembers a home filled with quiet resignation or newfound freedom. They shared a house, but they didn't share a home in the exact same way. Now let's talk about birth order, one of the most powerful and often overlooked influences on personality. It's not just a cliché, it's a fundamental dynamic. The eldest child is born into an adult-centered world. For a time, they receive undivided attention, higher expectations, and often more rules. This environment tends to foster traits like responsibility, leadership, and a deep-seated anxiety about failure. They are the family's pioneers, charting a path for others to follow, but also bearing the weight of their parents' hopes and dreams. The middle child, on the other hand, grows up negotiating space. They are sandwiched between the past and the future, learning diplomacy, adaptability, and sometimes the art of invisibility. They often become the emotional glue of the family, skilled at reading people and keeping the peace, because their position demands it. And the youngest? They inherit a world already in motion. They have older siblings to compete with and learn from, and parents who have mellowed out considerably. This combination tends to nurture creativity, humor, and a willingness to take risks. They're often the charmers, the rebels, the ones who break the mold, because the mold has already been used. Birth order doesn't define your destiny, but it sets the psychological stage on which your individuality performs. Beyond the big three, genetics, parenting, and birth order, lies a whole universe of non-shared environments. These are the unique personal experiences that happen to one sibling but not the other. Think about it. Did you have the same best friend as your brother? Did you play the same sport as your sister? One sibling might have a teacher who sparks a lifelong passion for science, while the other endures a bully who quietly erodes their confidence. One might suffer a childhood illness that makes them more cautious, while the other has a near-miss accident that makes them more daring. These aren't just random events. They are forks in the road that lead to different destinations. Psychologists have found that these unique individual experiences are incredibly powerful in shaping who we become, sometimes even more so than the shared family environment. This is why two siblings can remember the same family vacation completely differently. One remembers the thrill of learning to swim, while the other remembers the sting of a sunburn and feeling left out. Their experiences of the same event were entirely separate, and each memory carved a different groove into their personality. Ultimately, we're not just products of our family, we're also architects of our own identity. From a young age, we actively seek out our own niche within the family system, a process called de-identification. In simple terms, siblings subconsciously try to be different from one another. If the older sibling is the responsible academic, the younger one might lean into being the creative free spirit. It is a way of carving out a unique identity and reducing competition for parental attention and resources. This isn't a conscious choice, but a powerful instinctual drive to stand out. It's a silent negotiation for space, for recognition, for a role that is uniquely ours. This explains why you often see siblings who are polar opposites, the introvert and the extrovert, the athlete and the artist, the pragmatist and the dreamer. They are not just reacting to their environment, they are actively shaping it by defining themselves in opposition to their siblings. This drive for individuality is perhaps the final, crucial ingredient in the recipe of personality. So, the next time you look at your sibling and wonder how you both came from the same place, remember this complex and beautiful tapestry. It's a blend of shared genes expressed differently, of parents who changed over time, of the unique role you played in the family drama, and of all the tiny secret experiences that belonged only to you. You didn't just grow up together. You grew up alongside each other, on parallel paths that were destined to diverge. And in that divergence, you both found who you were meant to be. You've probably heard the saying, genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. This is especially true for siblings. Even if you grow up in the same house, you're living in a completely different psychological reality. Picture two siblings. One is shy, loves reading, and finds comfort in quiet spaces. The other is a social butterfly, always on the go, drawn to sports and big groups of friends. Even with the same parents, their worlds are already splitting apart. Every interaction with teachers, friends, and mentors, and every early success starts to reinforce certain pathways in their brains. Our brains learn through repetition and reward. Every single experience leaves a physical mark. It creates or strengthens connections between our neurons. These connections literally shape how we think, feel, and react to the world. Neuroscientists can now look at a brain structure and see a map of a person's history, not just their DNA. So those two siblings living under one roof are, in essence, growing up in two completely different worlds of experience, each one sculpting a unique mind. Now let's talk about intelligence, one of the most debated topics when it comes to siblings. So many parents have quietly wondered, why does one of my kids seem to just get it, while the other learns in a totally different way? It's true that IQ is heavily influenced by genes, about 50% on average, but that leaves a massive 50% that's shaped by everything else: the environment, nutrition, stress levels, and the emotional support a child receives. What we often miss is that intelligence isn't just one thing. There's analytical intelligence, which helps with problem solving. There's creative intelligence for thinking outside the box. And there's emotional intelligence, which is all about understanding people. Each of these is wired through a unique mix of brain chemistry, dopamine levels, and social learning. Take dopamine, for example. It's the brain's reward chemical, and it affects how motivated we feel to tackle a challenge or learn something new. Studies have found that siblings can actually have different sensitivities to dopamine. This might make one child naturally more driven by achievements and goals, while the other is more motivated by curiosity or emotional connection. So, one sibling might excel at logic and math, while the other is a natural at empathy and communication. Both are brilliant forms of intelligence, and both are incredibly valuable. Hormones also play a much bigger role in shaping our personalities than most people realize. Even tiny variations in chemicals like testosterone, oxytocin, or cortisol can dramatically change a person's temperament. Think about how you and your sibling handle stress. One of you might stay calm and detached, while the other feels anxiety much more intensely. These aren't personality flaws. They're biological tendencies that are interacting with your life experiences. For instance, someone with higher levels of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, might find it easier to form strong emotional connections and feel empathy for others. On the other hand, a sibling with a higher baseline level of cortisol, the stress hormone, might be more cautious, detail-oriented, or even a bit of a perfectionist. Our brains aren't just cold, hard machines. They're living, breathing reflections of a beautiful dance between our emotions, our chemistry, and our memories. The family dynamic itself is a silent, powerful force. If one sibling feels like they're living in the shadow of another, they might unconsciously start to define themselves in opposition to them. Psychologists have a name for this: de-identification. If the older sibling is the star student, the younger one might pivot toward art, music, or humor. It's not because they aren't as capable academically, it's because they're searching for their own unique identity, their own space to shine within the family ecosystem. The result is that children evolve not just as individuals, but as counterbalances to each other. They become emotional mirrors, constantly shaping and reshaping their identities through contrast and comparison. One sibling's strength highlights the other's, creating a kind of harmony through difference. And there's another layer to this mystery: the times themselves. Think about it. A child born in the year 2000 and their sibling born in 2010 might share the same parents, but they didn't grow up in the same culture. In just one decade, technology, social media, and our global awareness completely redefine what's considered normal. The younger sibling is growing up in a world that's more connected than ever, yet also more distracting. A world that's rich in information, but poor in attention. The older sibling might feel a sense of nostalgia for a simpler time, while the younger one thrives in the middle of all that digital complexity. There's an invisible generation gap that can exist even within the same household. But despite all these differences, one powerful truth remains unshaken. Siblings share a hidden emotional code. All those shared memories, the good, the bad, the hilarious, they form neural imprints that last a lifetime. The sound of your siblings' laugh, the smell of a specific meal your family used to eat, even a silly inside joke. These things can light up the same emotional circuits in your brains no matter how far apart you are. So while siblings may argue, drift apart, or evolve in completely different directions, they will always carry the same emotional DNA. They share an internal landscape that was shaped by those shared beginnings. In the end, a family isn't a mold that's designed to shape us all alike. It's more like a shared soil, where each mind gets to grow in its own direction. Same roots but different flowers. And that's the real wonder of it all. Our individuality doesn't break our connection, it actually deepens it. Our differences are what make our shared story so much richer and more complete. So the next time you look at your brother or your sister, try not to see what divides you. Instead, look at what your differences reveal about the beautiful, messy, and incredible complexity of being human. Thanks for watching.